Good afternoon. Welcome to KelownaNow Live. I'm Jim Check. I'm here with Alison Ruks. Maybe tell us the companies that you run and operate.
Sure. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. So I've got a few companies under my belt. One is True North Home and Family, which is a textiles company, and we produce in Alberta. And my other company is business consulting called Steiner and Ruks Co.
And you've done some, you do some work with Accelerate Okanagan every now and then?
I do. Yeah. Yep. I am an executive in residence with Accelerate Okanagan too.
So you're busy.
Just a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about some of the challenges that female entrepreneurs kind of face in the current environment, I guess.
You
Right?
bet.
Yeah. So maybe lay out some of those challenges.
Yeah, that's a great question and a long one. It's definitely a long answer. So I think with being a female entrepreneur, I've been in the space for about 20 years at this point. I started my first business in my early 20s, and it was a business that was just in the natural health space. I started right from farmers markets and developed some products and got them into natural health food stores. And I didn't experience many difficulties at that point when I was an entrepreneur, but when I started to experience a little bit more of difficulty was when I got into the cannabis space in about 2013. And what I found was being a woman in that space, it was almost like I had to adopt a lot of male characteristics to be taken seriously. I think that was one of the most interesting pieces that I ran into.
Was that space kind of filled with, I don't say this correctly, macho men kind of though? Was that kind of like, like kind of that group of men that kind of went in there? Like, I know that there's a lot of stockbroker type guys that were in there and a lot of guys, because I think a lot of that started as stock promotions, right? Because,
yeah,
there were so many companies that were trying to fill that space.
Yeah.
And then I think, there's this group of people that move from, whether it's the .com bubble, and then they move to the cannabis thing, and then they move on to, whatever's the next hot flavor, Bitcoin or,
Yep.
or what have you,
Yeah.
right? So that tends to be a group of males dominant.
It was.
They tend to be male dominating.
Yes, it was. I look back and I think, but it was about 10 years ago when I first started in that space. And I was one of the longest standing female executives in that space. And I was one of the only, especially from 2013. And so before that, I hadn't had a ton of experience working with male-dominated organizations because I think aside from my first business that I had, which, I was, again, starting at farmers markets, just working primarily as a solopreneur, I wasn't really in a male-dominated space. And I also originally had worked at the Royal Bank, and that was mostly female. So my first real foray into a male-dominated industry was the cannabis space. And you're right. You're 100% right. It was kind of like a reiteration of folks that had started in the .com piece. And a lot of the companies, not necessarily the first one that I was working with, but a lot of the other companies that were in the space, it was basically a story and an idea and raising money on that.
Yeah, promotions.
You bet.
Right? So,
yeah.
And that group, and I'm familiar with that group, they've moved from when it was the gold sector is hot, they sector to sector to sector, they kind of jump around, right?
You bet.
So,
yeah.
And find out where that is. And I kind of knew that space would kind of like lose favor on their coming out party, which was, I think, July 1st when it was legalized. I knew that the hype was done, right? Because it's all the build up to that point, and then all of a sudden those guys would move on to the next thing because there was no story left to sell.
Yeah, it's true. In 2013, the company, again, that I was involved with, there was a lot of great things. There was a lot of great people. Specifically with that company, we had a ton of fun. We had a really great product that we had launched with. It was actually a product that we took the legal part of the cannabis plant firstly, and we took the hemp seed and we spun it out into a product for pets. And so it was a ton of fun. We had that product in Canada, then the United States the next year, and then over into Europe, and started to get into Asia.
For sure.
Yeah, it was, right? But what I found was really interesting was kind of what you're talking about, that bro culture. Really, I noticed it a lot when I was at a lot of the trade shows, right? So when we were integrating with a bunch of other companies, that's where I noticed a lot of that. And what it's been nice, though, to see is that, some of the companies that did really have kind of truth and integrity at heart, they still exist, and they're doing fairly well, and that's great to see. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting times.
No different than the .bomb thing when Amazon came out of that, and a few others came out of that. The dot when everything else blew up, right? Yeah. But some real stuff will show up out of that, right? And I was part of the mining culture for a while too, and we were an operator, and it definitely is like a tougher crowd. There was one young lady in the organization, and she was this, I won't say what she was, but she was very powerful. But she had grown fangs because she knew how to deal with people, and right? So
I can relate.
She had to grow a set of fangs to kind of operate in that environment. Right?
Yeah,
so
I agree.
And then you started a couple of companies, and maybe explain some of the products that you're doing right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the business consulting space probably since about 2015. So I kind of started that around the same time that I was an executive in the cannabis space. And then in about 2021, when things started to slow down and the majority of the companies that I was consulting for, they started really cutting back, losing money. Right. It was tough times. And so I ended up starting the textiles company, and that was in 2021. So it was really interesting way that it started, because I had actually found a product that had gone dormant. It was launched kind of in the early, I believe it was launched in the early 2000s. And it was a product that was a breastfeeding cover, but in the form of a baby hat. And so one of my habits was to look on CanadaBusinessesForSale.com. It's one of my nerdy habits that I do at night, and see what's for sale. And I found that company for sale. And so I purchased it in 2015, but I just left it on the shelf until I had an opportunity to revisit it. And so I knew that it needed a rebrand, and it needed to, bring manufacturing over to North America. And so that's what I did. 2021 came around, and everything, kind of got quiet and shut down. And I was like, well, my daughter's at home with me at this point, and it's time to spend some time getting that company going. And that's what I did. So brought all the manufacturing over to Massachusetts, actually, and then rebranded it as Mobo Baby is what it was called back then. And we launched it, and it did really well. We had tons of exposure and different
I think you did a really good job getting exposure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we were in Forbes and Medium and She Knows and a few other really reputable publications. So it was a lot of fun.
Financing, though, or getting funding to scale.
Yes.
Tough for being a female as well, but also maybe the environment kind of dried up too. Do you know what I mean? Like, because they were throwing money at tech startups like crazy, right? And then maybe lots of times they want a tech startup to be just a SaaS as opposed to a product based one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
you hit the nail.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so SaaS is just like, oh, does it have like 60% margins? And you're just like, well, we have this, but we have a really good product. And they're just like, yeah, is it SaaS? And you're just like, well,
I know.
Right? So and that's those same guys, right? That are just looking at that next thing, and now they kind of like have this formula, and I guess the power rests with this money group sometimes, like a lot, right? And they're looking for a specific vehicle, right? And it's tough, right, when you're trying to run a regular business kind of thing, right?
It's so true.
And trying to scale.
Yep, it is. It's so true, because I self-funded for the most part. Yeah. Aside from a bit of friends and family, that was the majority of the way that the company actually grew, right? Was self-funding. And I did look at fundraising for that company, and I did some informally. I wasn't, really out in your face doing fundraising, but, I definitely reached out to some of the usual suspects that were doing, women-based funding, et cetera. But, with that specific platform, it was tough because I think you hit the nail on the head with the whole things were drying up around the same point. But, it ended up being an opportunity for me to purchase another brand, which I did in 2021-22. I ended up purchasing a brand called True North Slings at the time, and it was a really great company based out of Lethbridge, Alberta. And they made baby carriers, linen baby carriers, and they were just gorgeous. And they had a great following and really engaged consumers, repeat buyers. It was awesome. The sales were really great. So I picked that up, and so I ended up having the two products, and so I ended up merging the two brands. And once I did that, we were making pretty good sales. And when I went to go and shop it around for fundraising, it was just, like you said, the software as a service side of things, it was just the hot place where money was going.
Yeah, they're looking for big margins.
That's the thing. And, it wasn't necessarily supportive of, a made in Canada, local product, smaller business, even though, we did have good margins and we did have good sales and the growth was steady and regular. I just didn't get that interest. But it was crazy because I compare it back to the way it was in the cannabis industry. And I was involved in raising tens of millions of dollars over the years. And it was on an idea and a good PowerPoint. And when I came around with True North and went fundraising for that, I had actual results. Like, hey, check out my sales, check out our margins, check out the popularity, look where things are going with, people who are wanting to buy things in Canada, people who are wanting things that are made in Canada, they're wanting natural textiles. And I was like, I'm hitting all of these marks. Why isn't anybody interested in investing?
I can probably share just some. It's a little bit crazy. Yeah. I have some brokerage friends, and they kind of get set in their minds of what they're looking for. Like Sam Bankman-Fried, do you know that story?
Yes.
So the hair and the backpack, the shorts and the thing, and they're just like, if me and my broker buddy walked in with suits and everything, we pitched that idea, they would say, no. He walks in. And backpack, and he's like kind of aloof, and that's genius, right?
Yeah.
And they pour money into this guy, right? So that's the flavor of the day, and it turned out to be a scam. Yeah. But
you're so right.
It's sometimes the tough part is being that regular business person with a good idea. But I do think, sometimes if you just keep pushing on something, and I think an idea popped in my head, and obviously. You're doing baby stuff. What if, and I also have a daughter that's doing something. What if you were to take on products in that space and becoming more of the whole thing and then taking pieces of people's business? And because I think what you do have is the marketing side of it, right? Yep. You do have that figured out.
I do.
So, and then you're buying businesses, but how do you get enough to kind of create your own baby Rama?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean? So, I love that you said that because it's something that I have been because everybody wants a baby. Well.
Do you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, and it becomes a bigger thing. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, because I think one of the things that excites money people, how does it scale? How does it get bigger, right? Do you know what I mean? Because if they look at it and they say, well, great, you've got your two businesses there, right now I'm just going to throw numbers. Say it's doing $1 million a year. Yeah. It's going to take you 10 years to do $5 million a year. We're not interested, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
They're just it's a great business for you, but how do we make money?
Yep.
Right?
And that's 100% understandable. And I think, over the years in business, what really came to the table for me was, what are your customer acquisition costs and how long do you own that customer for, right? And so I went through Arlene Dickinson's Business Accelerator program in 2021-ish. And that was a lot of the feedback that I got because it was only that one product to start, right? Was, okay, digital advertising has changed at this point. It costs you, let's just say at that point, it costs, $19 to get a customer. Your margins are X. And then you're only selling them one product because you only own mom for however long she was breastfeeding.
But you have her attention.
Well, and what ended up happening after that was that's when I ended up buying True North, right? And I was like, okay, so, the breastfeeding mother, maybe, some women breastfeed for a month, some don't at all, some breastfeed for 2 years, great. But then when I bought True North, then we had the baby carriers, right? And you're able to wear your baby for up till about 35 pounds, right? So that can be a 3-year-old child. But then we started surveying our customers and finding out, what else did they want? And how could we keep that mother for longer? And so we ended up venturing out into home goods. So now it's True North Home and Family. family. So we've got natural linen products for the house as well. So pillow covers, curtains, duvet covers, tea towels, aprons, you name it, anything textile based you can have in your house, we now do. So that has really helped for keeping our customers for longer. So that customer acquisition cost ends up being spread out over a longer period of time.
Right. You open their wallet up on other items.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So now we're looking at, okay, so we've done the direct to consumer thing. So that is great and wonderful. But as I mentioned, digital ads and everything has changed a lot. It's harder to get to your customers.
Right.
And so now we're looking at a retail strategy as well, because we do have the margins. I do have a facility in Alberta. We've got our own machines, and we've got amazing women that are working for us. And we've got a cost structure for them that they get paid fairly, and we have good margins. And so that's why we're starting to look at the retail space.
So busy though, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I'm a mom.
So I guess so I guess the big question is if somebody gave you $10 million, $100 million, could you scale
yes
at a pace that would provide a return to the people giving you that money?
Yep, absolutely. I think what I've learned over the years in business and how to keep costs to a minimum, how to get the most bang for your buck. I grew up relatively low income-ish, right? So you learn how to really
make sure the dollar counts.
Good bang for your buck.
That's right.
And I've learned a lot in the cannabis industry as well that, oh boy, we had so much money to spend. And I saw so much waste, like incredible amounts of waste.
I worked in the mining industry.
Yeah, right. See, so you get it. And so I've learned where the most value is to put your money. And I definitely do believe that if True North had the right capital investment, I think that we could do something pretty awesome with it.
Because part of what you've said and what I understand too is it is the story for people that invest, right? You're selling a story, right? You have to sell that story and for people to buy into that story. Part of the problem with the tech industry is a lot of people sold a story but didn't really know how to run a business, right?
That's so true.
And then they felt entitled that, I got my Series A and a Series B, and they just kept living off the next financing. No different than the mining industry. Like 100%. A lot of these people think they invented this stuff. This stuff's been around for a long time, right? It just gets regurgitated, right, in different forms, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's the same model, right? So, and then the mining industry is guilty of it too, because they took money that they thought was theirs to use however they wanted, but it's the shareholders. Do you know what I mean? Like if you don't take care of that money, people won't give you more money, right? And that's what I think happened to the, they started coming up with words like unicorn and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you have unicorns eating unicorns as companies start going under and stuff like that, and a viable business plan is what's really helpful, right?
Yep.
Like a viable business plan.
I agree.
Like how are you going to make money, right? Because, the people now that have the money that are still willing to invest, that's their questions. Like, how do I get my money back?
Yeah,
right?
And I get that. And I think what's so interesting too is, through the cannabis industry and people wanted such fast returns because it was possible. I mean, even myself with the money that I put in the space, like we're talking 2, 3, 4, 500% returns in a matter of months.
Yeah. A lot of that was in the stock though.
Yes.
For a lot of people, it was in the stock itself, and that stock never lived up to its.
It depends when you cashed out.
Yeah,
I got lucky.
But it was in the share itself, though, right? In the share values, and I did too, because I just sold everything on July 1 because I knew that the story was over.
Yeah.
But the company itself, a lot of them were never profitable.
No.
Right? Do you know what I mean? Like the entity itself.
Very few.
And that's the same thing for mining companies, right? A lot of them don't make money, right?
Yep, that is so true. And they do exist, like you just said, on just constantly raising money over and over and over and over again.
They are fundraising vehicles.
You bet.
And the sad thing is a lot of people, they're kind of like a burning match if you think about it. Like I have this match and I'm holding it and I'm telling you a story and I'm telling you how wonderful it is.
Yeah.
And then you buy the match from me and you hold it for a while and you pass it on to the next person. Last person holding the match gets burnt, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of but out of that real businesses come, right? And people with real talents, and marketing is one of the biggest talents because you have to be able to sell something to somebody.
Totally.
Right? So
Agreed.
because we market all day long, right? When you got married, you marketed yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
It took me 8 years.
There you go. And when you're trying to get your child to do something, you're marketing them.
So
right?
true.
Do you know what I mean?
It is. I like looking at life in a marketing aspect because you're right. It's true.
I think the government markets to us every day.
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation.
It's pretty scary. So what do you think could be better, like in the support networks in a small community like Kelowna for female entrepreneurs? Because there's a lot of people that don't want to just work for a company anymore. They want to work for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a hard time for entrepreneurship right now. And I think it isn't even just necessarily for women either. I think that it runs for men as well. But people just don't have the money to invest right now. And because the economy is the way that it is, people are getting, lettuce is like what, $6, $8 a head. And so
crazy. People have to keep what they have.
Yeah.
And also even companies have pulled back. We've pulled back, right?
Yeah.
Like it's you have to keep dry powder.
Yeah. That's
because you don't know what's going on because, like COVID hurt most businesses. It hurt us. Like we did Level Up. If you ever attended Level Up, we did Level Up in 2019, which had, it was a $500,000 investment for us. Yeah. And we had 2 prime ministers and stuff like that speaking. And that was 2019. In 2020, we had Gary Vaynerchuk coming as the headliner. That was, he alone was, I think it was $250,000 just for him. And we had 8 other speakers or something like that. And COVID killed that. Yeah. And that business right now is we didn't do anything with it because for the longest time we didn't know if, more restrictions would come and that. Now it's, we've been weakened with other things, Bill C-18, which is like having a knee on our throat and stuff like that. So for us to put out that, because you have to pay for the speakers first, for us to put that out right at this point is just not an investment we're willing to make. Right?
Yeah, it's tough. It is. It's really tough because, again, people are holding on to their cash more. Yeah. And then the reality of, the fast money and the fast returns, I think a lot of investors are starting to wise up a little bit. I mean, I definitely know so many folks that were investing in the cannabis space and in the software space as well. Like they've been burned now, right? I mean, look at all the crypto that it's walking back, right?
So I also think in the stock market, as AI becomes more prevalent too, you'll notice that most of the energy is kind of pushed into, like they're calling it the Magnificent Seven or whatever they want to call it. So a lot of investment dollars go through the the S&P and all that kind of stuff too, and it just less and less is done with analysis and stuff like that, and they just look chasing the same thing. And that's what happens when you have algorithms doing most of the work. They compete against each other, right? And they all tend to chase the same thing, which makes it tough to get investment money into other sectors, right? If you look at the breadth of the the Dow and all that stuff, it's not very deep, right? Most of the small stocks or small cap are struggling, right? They're struggling to fund themselves, right? And with inflation, if anybody has debt right now, and it's renewing, it's going to be a tough slug, right? So
it is.
And the government makes it tougher with more regulations, more this, more that, more this, and tougher to hire employees. You know what I mean? It's really, really tough.
It's not a good space. It's not a good space for almost any business at this point. And, when it comes to women in business and a lot of the smaller businesses, like for example, with my experience through Accelerate Okanagan, I do tend to get a lot of the businesses that are in similar spaces to mine that come my way for support. And I'm just seeing a disproportionate number of businesses that are, Main Street businesses, what we call them, right? Smaller mom and baby stores. I've actually probably been contacted by about 5 or 6 baby stores from across Canada that known that I have, helped out in that space before, and they're all on the brink. Right? Because rents are expensive, debt is expensive, all raw materials are starting to get more expensive.
Even retail, if you have ground floor space, you're dealing with security, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And it just becomes such a challenging environment.
It is.
I do think you have one of the best skills, and you just figure out a way to parlay that into a way to help a lot of people, but help your business grow as well. It's the good thing about challenging environments, it does bring the betterment or the better out of a lot of people though too, right? A lot
Yeah,
of
I
people
think
don't survive it though.
it
but,
brings a lot of people together too. What I've noticed and that I've found really supportive in general is so many businesses. What I'm noticing is people are actually starting to be more honest about what's happening. And it's not so much, oh, look at me on social media. I'm perfect and my business is great and all of that's wonderful. Like there's this culture of vulnerability that we're starting to see, especially across LinkedIn, of people being 100% honest about what entrepreneurship really is like. But I think for smaller businesses like mine and like a lot of the other mom and baby stores, if there is an investment to be made, like it's hard because you don't want to invest in a sinking ship, and that's obvious, right? But in a business, let's say like mine, True North, we keep things super tight, very small. We don't lean, I should say. We don't have storefront, so we don't have all of those upfront costs. And so if someone was going to invest in that, like we'd be looking for an investor that would have a longer threshold, longer horizon, but they also would have to have that appetite to invest in something that is, women owned, made in Canada. Like it's that social investing side of things, right? And so it's a very particular investor profile that would invest in a business like mine versus, any of the larger financial institutions, et cetera.
So. Yeah, even they're scared to invest.
And that is hard, right? And, you even look what Arlene is doing. And, she's got her venture park ecosystem and they're mainly going CPG, right? And so they're investing in primarily, Canadian food products. And so that's been really interesting to see. But there is a longer investment horizon. And they're willing to work with the companies because they don't just throw a check at them and say, okay, here's $100,000 and best of luck. Like they've got that whole seed to sale ecosystem where they're starting to support along the way. And it's been interesting because there's a few people that I've connected with in the Kelowna area that are starting to be more interested in that type of investment firm where it's not just, okay, here's your check, best of luck. It is providing all of that support along the way so that there's a greater chance of success. And then I believe it is in BC. You know NBC? Do you know that?
I don't.
So it's a provincial organization that is, I think they had a $500 million fund. Don't quote me on that, but they are really focused on investing in British Columbia companies, but it is that longer horizon. And so they're giving people a chance to partner up with an investor, get the type of funds they need, but don't feel that they have to, turn around and sell the company at a 7 times multiple in 2 years, right? So there is some changes that I'm seeing there that are really promising, and I love that. So let's just hope that that's a trend that we kind of start to see continue in the future.
If somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they find you?
LinkedIn is the best way. Yep.
How do you want to spell that? I guess we can put a link down there too, right?
A link for LinkedIn.
Link for LinkedIn. Pun. There you go. And your business is online?
Yeah. So True North Home and Family is my retail business. And then my consulting business, you can find me at AlisonRuks.com.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Anything else you want to share today? Or
no, but thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.